all the way from New Mexico, Dan the Man Milnor in the van. Dan and the Man Milnor.
I'm here.
You're here.
I'm in a frozen van.
We can tell.
And the van is not moving today by the looks of it. And it started snowing in the middle of the night, and it's going to snow much of the day. And so my plan to be in town in front of my laptop is out the window.
Dan, our topic for today is storytelling with your camera, right? So this is something we've talked about before, but as we were talking before the show, I don't think you can talk about this enough. And you are the guy that's turned on a lot of people to storytelling with their cameras. So what's up? What do you got to say about this? Yeah,
story, also sometimes referred to as narrative form photography. It's not better than any other form of photography. I mean, I think a lot of people like to just walk around and look for individual images, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I think for whatever reason, for me, I was bent on doing narrative work from the day that I picked up a camera. And I think that ties to the fact that I was writing before I was making pictures. And so I was always writing stories. And when I picked up a camera, it felt like a way of just visually telling a story as opposed to written. Yeah, I think I made a list of things that I think are helpful when you start thinking about doing stories with a camera.
Yeah.
And it's a very different way of working. It takes a little practice. It takes patience. It takes a lot of time. And I think that's why sometimes it turns some people off, because just the time required to do this. But I've got 6 or 7 points here that we can go over that I think would be good things to keep in mind.
I love it.
If you want me to start on those.
Bang away, man. Let's hear those 6 or 7 points.
All right. Number one is number one for a reason and cannot be understated, if you will. And that is to find your story. I often get questioned by people. I literally will have people send me an email or a text or a message or something, or comment on YouTube and say, tell me what to photograph. And that's I understand partly where that might be coming from. It's a very bizarre question for me, because I have a list of stories a mile long that I'll probably never get to, even if the best case scenario, if someone just came to me and said, I'll fund you for the rest of your life, you don't have to work, all you have to do is go do these projects, I probably wouldn't finish all of them, and I keep adding to the list. But the easiest thing to think about is when someone asks me what to photograph, I basically just say, well, who are you? Like, what do you believe? What do you think? And how do those beliefs and feelings make you feel? What do they make you do? What do you love? What agitates you? What do you think about before you go to sleep at night? What's the first thing you think about in the morning? Those are good clues to finding what your story is. I think literature is another. I think music is another. I think current events, depending on the style of photography you want to do. I know a couple of folks who are in the trenches in the Ukraine right now. Photographers who are over there, which has got to be a challenging and potentially very, very dangerous place. If the match is lit, these guys are caught in the trenches, and I don't think anybody's going to be stopping to, say, hey, you're not an enemy combatant. They're just going to be shooting at everything and everyone. So, depending on the kind of thing, but finding your story is really the key. That's point number one.
On that note, this is a good place for your notebook, right? You can sketch this stuff out. You can even make kind of a little storyboard. Yeah. Use your notebooks, you guys. That helps you clarify like those points Dan made. What am I all about? What interests me? You can draw, or you can do what you did. Is that a little Instax photograph or what?
Yeah, these are images that were made with a
Polaroid.
Images made with a Fuji camera, but then I printed them out by Instax.
Yeah,
they were from last week's trip to Baja.
Nice. Okay,
point number 2, and this is directly tied to point number 1, is once you've found your story, then reduce it. Reduce it to the smallest possible form of that story, because most often that means that you're going to have a smaller area to cover. You're going to have less people to cover. But oftentimes those microscopic stories are capable of telling a much broader story, but in finite form. And the best example I can give you is when I was in college, I was in photo school in like 1990, 1991, 92. And there was a photographer, I want to say at the time, he might have been out of Pittsburgh, but I can't remember. His name was Jim Hubbard. And Jim Hubbard did this thing called Shooting Back, where he went into inner city neighborhoods and he gave cameras to kids. He was the first person, in my recollection, that ever did this. This project has been cloned, stolen, copied a zillion times since then. But Jim was a newspaper photographer, and it was it could have been Chicago, it was somewhere in the Midwest or the Northeast. And he went into these neighborhoods and gave kids cameras, and it was really the first time that they ever had a voice, and like a voice that would go out into the world. And that kicked off a lot of people talking about homeless situations in America. So by the time I come to photo school in 90, 91, 92, there's a lot of documentary and photojournalism students who were like, I'm going to do a project about homelessness in America. And, that's a huge story. However, there's probably someone within, a few miles of your house that's homeless. And that one person is representative of the entire story.
Yeah.
So it's if I said I'm going to cover homelessness in America, that's a multi-year project at the least. And so, but I know there's a guy living under a bridge on the Santa Fe River. I know because I've seen him and I've talked to him a bunch of times. That guy's representative of all of it.
Right.
And so I can just go and spend as much time as possible. So reduce that story as much as you possibly can, because it just makes the story much more doable. And also it's just easier for people to relate to the overall project.
Good point. Absolutely.
Are you ready for point 3?
I'm ready for 3.
You look ready.
I'm ready for 3. You guys ready out there?
I think we're ready.
Okay. We're going to be, we're listening.
Point number 3 is figure out what your goal is with the project and work backwards from the goal. I want to break this in half. I want to break this in half for half of the people who just want to make pictures and are not professionals and are not trying to make a story that they're then going to put out into the world and try to convince other people to look at it. If that is the case, and you are, let's say, a consumer or prosumer, and you want to try doing stories, it's not necessarily critical that you do a ton of research. It's weird that it's freezing up, but so the other half is for people who actually want to put this work out into the world. And if that's the case, if you're putting your work out on the table and saying, I think this is important and I want you to look at this, or you're even trying to approach the industry of photography and saying, I want to get this published, or, I want to be known, then you owe it to yourself. You owe it to the people in your photographs, and you owe it to photography to do your research. And this is a topic that terrifies a lot of people because, one, they just don't want to do research. They don't want to be bothered. A lot of people want to think that they've done something original, and the easiest way to do that is just ignore anything else that's ever been done. So you think to yourself, wow, I'm probably the first person that's ever done this. And then you do a little research, and all of a sudden you realize you're not the first. And that can be kind of a sobering feeling, but it's absolutely fine. And the vast majority of stories that are being done today have already been done, but the person doing them today is building in something new,
right,
or providing a new perspective, or saying, look, I know this has been done before, but this is where I fit in, and this is the context of what the work I'm doing now is. And so, again, if you're not doing this professionally, if you don't have any interest, then you can, you don't necessarily need to do all this. But if you are trying to be a photographer, it's critical.
Absolutely. And just knowing, also the research is knowing the environment you're going into will help you understand how to approach this. And you can not only see what other people have done, but what to expect when you get there, right, Dan?
Yeah. I mean, doing research is, one, I think it's actually quite fun. It's one
Yeah.
of the best parts of doing a project because odds are you're going to learn quite a few things. It also makes the photography easier because it gives you more ammo to work from. If I'm doing a project in southern New Mexico and I've researched, if I'm doing a project on the militias in southern New Mexico, the tangential stories to that are migration, borders. And then when you talk about migration, you talk about things like the reintroduction of the Mexican gray wolf into the border areas. Well, the gray wolf's been migrating through there for forever. It was humans who put a fence up, made a border there, and suddenly this arbitrary line is like, hey, there's a border here. Well, the wolves have been migrating through there forever. People have been migrating through there forever. So even if I'm doing a story on the militias, I've got all these tangential angles that are coming in. And the more I research on that, the more ammunition I have to work those into the story I'm doing.
Please subscribe and enable the bell so you don't miss any of our new shows. Like the video and please share it and leave your comments. I love hearing from you. And remember to get out and capture your own images of life.